Hello and welcome to another interesting episode of Charles' Weekly Parti. Even though we're only 2 episodes in, this is going to be a little bit different than I'm used to. So, before I get started, let's roll the intro. Alright, first and foremost, I want to start off by saying this is going to be a little bit on the shorter side. First, I'm in a little bit of a time crunch, so I have to keep a close eye on things. And the other thing is that when I went to my recording spot this morning, I forgot what I needed to have water. So without water, I have to be careful not to completely throw my throat out, which I have done in the past. I learned pretty quickly on that if I don't have a cup of water, it gets to be very painful. So on the bright side, I have a thing of cough drops, so by the end of this episode, when my throat is thoroughly sore, I'll be able to relax it somehow. Another thing I wanted to point out is that my tech section is going to be a little bit different. It's technology related, I guess is the best way to put it, but it is not purely focused on technology. And I've said before that this podcast is my weekly party. It's the basic idea of what's going on in my head for the week. And this week there are a couple of things that caught my attention. One of them is a little bit of an older piece of news, but I think still important to clear up confusion on. But regardless, I think it's an interesting spot to be in. But sometimes technology isn't at the forefront of my mind. But there is one thing that happened this week that is high up there. So, getting started, with my mind wandering this week, I wanted to also sort of wander in my architecture thoughts. And as cold as it is in winter, take a little break and go to the House to Wander. So it was designed by Indico, and it is located in Mexico. I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name of the specific area it's in. So one of the benefits about being in a warmer climate is that you're able to put more focus and I guess the best way to put it is more of an emphasis on the outdoors when you have more of a warm climate. While you do need to worry about keeping the interiors as cool as possible, preferably as passively as possible, it still comes down to having the ability to enjoy the outdoors. And in the warmer climates, people like the warmer temperatures a lot more. But that isn't the only thing that really sort of separates this house from the rest. This house focuses on sort of creating routes and paths for people to enjoy and sort of feel, I guess, a little bit of a wave of excitement. I'm trying to think of the best thing to compare it to. I think the best thing is a fun house where you have a beautiful sort of, you do and don't know what's going to be around each turn. And I guess that is the best way to put it, because you know it's going to be exciting, but you don't know what it's going to be yet. Either that or like the small little carnival fun houses, you know what the end is going to be, but you don't know what the end's going to be, you know what the start's going to be, but you don't know what's in between. And that's sort of what this house does to really set it apart. Another little thing that caught my attention about this is that the architects decided to elevate the house one level above street level. So the garage is underneath the house, and the parking area is also on the street level because it would be way too challenging to do anything else. But it also creates this ability for a staircase to join up the areas. So when you get out of your car, you don't just walk up 2 steps and you're in. You have to walk up a little, I guess, more decorative staircase to sort of build anticipation for what you're going to be experiencing next. On the list of other intriguing things on this house, you have a double height living room. So I guess in more contemporary houses, this is becoming a slightly more noticeable trend. With your standard cookie cutter house, every single space and room is one story. The floors don't overlap except for where the staircases are. So double height spaces really sort of add a little bit of add a little bit of a curiosity element to anyone who might be visiting, and sort of connect the living room or whatever space might be double height with other areas of the building. Although now that I'm thinking about it, a lot of the houses that I've talked about have double height living rooms. So I guess the best way to think about this is having the living room sort of being a focal point. Because the living room is generally the area where if you are entertaining guests, where you'll sit down and talk with them. So yeah, you may have a meal in the dining room to enjoy, but when you're sitting down relaxing over a drink or two, that usually happens in the living room. So I guess it sort of makes sense that you'd have the living room as being a primary focal point. The bedrooms are a spot for your tastes to be, for your entertainment. However, having everything in your private spaces and having dull sort of public spaces sort of takes away the fun. Everyone's going to enjoy going to the let's say you have a friends group, everyone's going to enjoy one person's dwelling a little bit more than everyone else's. And that's usually going to come down to how they feel inside of it. So having the double height space is going to change the way you feel. Because if it's a small living room, you might feel a little bit cramped. And I know in family gathering settings, that's definitely the case. If the living room is not very large, it feels small, cozy, but sometimes cramped. Raise the ceiling, or double the height of the ceiling, and all of a sudden you've changed that. You can't feel cramped in a spot that is way higher than average. I think the average floor height in residential settings is, I think, 8 feet from floor to ceiling. So if you think about it, it really is just a different way to view simple dwelling, and how simple little decisions can completely change the way you feel. Speaking of public and private, I'd like to go over how This house really does divide the public and the private functions of its offerings. So on the first level, which is one level above street level, you have the kitchen, your dining area, living room, pool with a terrace with a really cool looking shower next to it, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, a patio, a fire area, and a little outdoor garden. The private functions are on the second floor, with the primary and secondary bedrooms being up there. And if I remember correctly, each of them has a bathroom, with the master bedroom having two sinks and a lot more area to work with. The other thing about both of the bedrooms is that they each have a little patio space or little deck space available to them, which is covered and sheltered, providing a spot to enjoy the outdoors right before bed or during bed. Although personally I wouldn't keep or at least for me, I could sit in my bed, enjoy something with the door open to the outside. But once I go to sleep, close the door, because I don't need a metric ton of insects in there. Actually, that might be a reason to keep it closed more often. But having that just connection to the outside is absolutely phenomenal. And I mentioned that the shower looked interesting. I guess that applies to all the showers. The picture of a shower that I saw from one of the bedrooms had a large sort of rain head faucet to it. And I guess the good part about modern faucet technology is that you're able to have a shower head that makes it feel more like it's more like soothing rain, instead of here's the water, enjoy it. And I know which one I prefer. The shower next to the pool was its own interesting concept, because it reminds me of a more commercial faucet, where you have a box extruding from the wall with your temperature controls and shower head above, except instead of having a shower head mounted on the box, the shower head is part of the box as it curves at the top where the head is. So it feels a little bit less like you just have an extra box sticking out of the wall, more like the form actually means something. And you also have next to it a little handheld, I don't know what the term is for it, but a little handheld shower head, that's where I'll leave it, to be able to use to wash areas that you can't with the faucet, or if that ends up being more convenient. As I know for younger kids, that can be a very useful thing. But still, things that sort of caught me off guard, because considering that showering is such a important component to our daily lives, it seems like it doesn't necessarily get as much love as it should. Because hop in the shower, but if the entire house is focusing on making good experiences and good feelings, then the shower has to be part of that too. So it comes down to thinking about not only how you have rooms, what color the rooms are, all that fun, but it really does boil down to the individual products that get chosen inside of a building. Because there are so many different fixtures that could have been chosen for those. And if they had chosen, I guess, a normal shower head in any way, shape, or form, I wouldn't have even been talking about it. It wouldn't have crossed my mind. But yet one of the photos of this house featured the shower with windows, and to which I'll leave to personal preference. But if it weren't for the different nature of them, I wouldn't have brought them up. And just looking at it still brings that sort of feeling of curiosity. What would it be like if I actually did get to wander around this house? And what other secrets does it hold? Because sure, I can see the floor plans, but actually imagining myself in there is difficult but interesting. And for me, I'm not as much of a fan of the warmer climates, but still, I'd go down to just to see this particular house, and I've gone over a lot of houses in Mexico. But somehow, a lot of them are interesting, and especially with the way they connect with the outdoors. So my thoughts on it are pretty simple. It's very detail focused, and it's all about creating experiences, which is a must in today's world. Speaking of things that are a must in today's world, let's talk about Amazon Prime. And when I say must in the world, for the majority of people, having Amazon Prime is not as much a question, it's more of a necessary evil. But recently, they've become the topic of discussion with the Amazon Prime price increase. So the price will be increasing from $119 to $139, and for students it will be increasing from $59 to $69. So Amazon has cited the rising costs of doing business as the reason for this price increase, which is completely believable because over the past basically 2 years now, where we've had pandemic and everyone doing shopping from home, the cost for Prime has remained fixed for us, the consumers. But for Amazon, the more someone uses their Prime benefits, the more they lose. So it comes down to who really wins. And the other question is it reasonable? Regardless of thoughts on how much money Amazon has, or how much the former CEO has, looking at Amazon itself, they have a lot of work to do. We're hearing reports of Amazon drivers having to go to the bathroom in plastic bottles. Warehouse workers saying basically not enough time to go to the bathroom. So everyone is talking about how the Amazon experience is more rigorous. You have a lot of extra work to do, a lot of extra time that they want you to put in, and not a lot of extra appreciation for doing it. And realistically speaking, that brings up some interesting sort of problems. Because on the one hand, as regular ordinary people, we want to have I guess the best way to put it is we would like our stuff and we wanted it yesterday. But we also want the people working for Amazon to sort of stay happy. And more than staying happy, just being treated fairly. However, at the same time, we're complaining about the fact that they're increasing the prices. And the problem sort of comes down to a sort of cyclical nature. For Amazon to increase benefits, you need to increase income or decrease profits. And you also need to make sure that you are not losing money just operating. And with shipping costs increasing, with supply shortages increasing, and with having trouble making sure you have all the workers you need, well, the costs of operating go up. But the question still remains, is it reasonable? And that's going to come down to you and me. For me, based on the amount that I use Prime, the fact that I share it with my family, it makes it worthwhile. I have a Prime account. Other members of my family are able to utilize it, and we split the yearly charge. But that's not the way it is for everyone. If you're paying for the membership out of your own pocket and you don't really get a lot out of it, then I'd say not as worthwhile. So with the Amazon Prime membership, you get your free shipping, you get reasonable deals on a lot of products. I'm not going to say the best deals because there are times when I've looked at the Amazon price, I've looked at the price for in-store, and I've said, you know what, it's better for everyone if I just do the in-store option. And you have, free shipping, relative deals, and Prime Video. You also have Prime Music. Prime Music is a relatively okay benefit. You get ad-free music, but it's limited in its selection. I've had the pleasure of using it before, and for me it's come down to more of a, I don't know how the best way to put it is, but it's come down to, I'd add a song to my library, and then a couple days later, it would magically be transferred to Music Unlimited, which meant that I couldn't listen to it anymore. I got fed up with that after that happened with more than 5 songs, and decided rather than continuing to pay money, so I was already bouncing between, on my iPad, the Prime Music and the Apple's music app for my personal music or for what I had on CDs. I said, you know what? If Amazon's going to keep doing this, I'm going to switch over to Apple Music. So for that benefit at least, I don't get much use out of it, which you can say is a pro or a con, but it is what it is. I will give some credit to Prime Music. I've found a few songs on there that I haven't been able to find on Apple Music. So Apple, if you're listening, please check Amazon Music's library and try and increase your offerings. But if you like all the features of Prime and you make good use of them, then by all means, keep that on your budget. However, if you aren't using it all that often, then, well, let's just say you should probably consider dropping that. For those who are interested in keeping it, there is a little bit of a loophole that will allow you to get one more year at the current price you're paying, because renewals after March 25th will be charged at the new price. So the loophole is you can gift yourself the gift of Prime and then set your Prime membership to no longer auto-renew. So once it expires, you just renew it with the gift of Prime and you should be all set. So there are more details on how to do that online if you go poking around. However, I think I've spent enough time about Amazon's increased payment for Prime, but I'd like to shift to a different payment discussion briefly, which is that Venmo and PayPal are going to be reporting commercial transactions over $600. Now, this did cause a little bit of confusion, and because I saw the confusion unfolding, I decided it would be wise to address the fact that it is happening. So Venmo and PayPal will only be reporting commercial transactions over $600. If it's just you and me handing money back and forth, they're not going to worry about that, because it's no secret that you'd use something like Venmo to say, oh, here's my portion of the rent, to whichever person is actually paying the rent. And going beyond that, you have to, using PayPal for similar things. Let's say, oh, had to, what do you call it? Had to split dinner. That's not going to be taxed there, and they're not going to report that. However, commercial transactions have shifted the way they're reporting. Previously, Venmo, PayPal, and other peer-to-peer payment services would report, if you are operating commercially, transactions exceeding either $20,000 or if you went and exceeded 200 transactions. Now, as part of the American Rescue Act, the threshold has been changed so that no matter how many transactions, it will be reported as soon as you get over $600 commercially. But I felt it important to clear up that this only applies if you're using a commercial or business account to complete your operations. If you're doing this on a personal account, you're not going to get hit over the head with this. Needless to say, you don't need to worry about your the easy port for switching rent to the person paying it going away and becoming a tax nightmare. Speaking of ports, there's a new laptop that actually doesn't have any. So Crow has made a new laptop, or at least a new conceptual laptop, that has I think it's about 7 millimeters thick, and it doesn't actually have any ports. There is a wireless dock that attaches to the back of the screen to be able to sort of run as, what's the best way to put it? To have some degree of I/O and to be able to actually charge the computer. So, going down to, quickly, I'd like to discuss my thoughts on it, which are simple and straightforward. Do I think this is a good idea? Yes and no. And let me give you the pros and cons, and I'll let you make the decision for yourself. Pros: no ports means you don't have much to worry about not working on the computer besides the internal components. Also, in theory, depending on how good they work with the keyboard, that sets up the stage for a waterproof laptop. which can be useful. The cons, however, are how many of us realistically use our laptops without ever needing to plug something into it. And also it's something just wirelessly, or I think magnetically attaching to the back of the screen. If the magnets are not good enough, then let's just say the moment if you go to do a presentation, you want to plug in an HDMI cable, which I don't know if the dock has or not. If the cable is heavy enough, it'll just pull the adapter off, or will it? That's yet to be seen because this is still sort of conceptual, and if it's been prototyped, there's not one that I've been able to see. The cons of it, though, the cons of it are that you have to have that wireless dock to do anything besides what you can do with a laptop without anything. And, well, if you're a fan of thin computers, you get the thinness of that, but at the same time, that means it's a little bit easier to bend and break. So, I don't know what the battery life is like in it, but all of that, whether or not you like it, is going to be a thing to see, and I guess that's why they're trying to gauge public reaction now. Because for some people, you can go portless. There are times when, yeah, I can use a portless computer without any problems. However, there are other times where I'm not a huge fan of using a portless laptop, and I end up needing the ports. And more often than not, personally, I find that a port becomes necessary at a random moment's notice. So, would it be useful for me? I don't think I'd be able to do as much with it. But for some people, that could work out pretty well. And if you want this sort of portless computer experience, well, my only suggestion is to try an iPad. Sure, you're stuck with iPad OS, but other than that, it's a relatively decent experience for what it is. But with all that being said, I think that's going to do it for today. So I do hope you've enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit different. My brain's in a little bit more of a tangle, I think, today. But if you did enjoy it, please subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And you can go to anchor.fm/weeklyparti, where you can listen to previous episodes of the podcast, as well as interacting with voice messages. And also, you can support the podcast. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave a review, and you can see the action on YouTube. With that being said, my parti for the week is just to create experiences, enjoy the outdoors, even though it is a little bit chilly, do something that you can't do in the summer. Take advantage of the opportunities, have a little fun, and I'll see you next week. Take care, and roll the outro.